Good morning. Now the fun part will start. Okay, so what we need to do actually, if you don't mind, move around because we don't want you to be sitting with your own groups. Please mingle together. So we have basically three groups. You know, those of you from India, in schools, the Veterinary Education Department, and the monastics. If we can have groups at each table. Can you do that now? Yes. Please. Thank you.
Get them moving around immediately.
Yeah. And could do the introduction when we need it. Share.
Oh, yeah. Over there? Do it to the side?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. My hair's like all tangled up. New groups. That's good.
The formal workshop begins now for free learning, social emotional ethical learning, or secular ethics. What we want to do is start with, okay, it's not here. That's it.
Huh.
Yeah, we have a little technical problem actually.
Why is that happening?
It should be okay.
Yeah?
So that's okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll
we
just
cannot
use it.
project
Okay.
Unfortunately, we cannot project this one.
Never mind.
Yes, we are unable to project. What should we do?
I think it will be relatively easy to remember three things.
Okay.
We can, this
So
group,
that-
challenge them immediately.
Okay.
We're challenging the
we're
group.
going to do introductions.
Thank
And
you.
that's how we-
Yeah, it's good. It's just not here.
At each table we have mixed representations. So we're going to model it, how to introduce each other. What we will do is spend 2 minutes each to introduce each other. So basically, we will pair in twos, and you will speak for 2 minutes, introduce yourself to your partner for 2 minutes. And as you do that, number one, who you are, your name, where you come from, what brings you to this workshop. In other words, what do you expect from this workshop? Also say a little bit about yourself, in this field where you fit, where you are coming from. Not place, but where you are coming from as an educator, what speaks to you. But this is really very brief, for 2 minutes. The listener will simply listen without interrupting. It's a mindful listening. Yes, it's a mindful listening practice. You will just listen. You have notebooks. You can make just a few key kind of, note the key points, because at the end you will be introducing your partner to the whole group. So we're going to do a brief demonstration of that, model it. It's no-brainer actually, that we may not need, but let's, for the sake of making it clear, let's do that. So one of us need to decide who will go first. So, would you like to do first?
Sure.
Okay, so we will do that. Okay, and here we won't do for whole 2 minutes, but you will have 2 minutes. We will just do it very brief, maybe half a minute. Yeah.
Who remembers the 3 things we'll be discussing? Raise your hand if you remember. Would you let us know what are the 3 things? Who are you? And second, what brings you here? So who are you as an educator in the field? And the third thing?
What expectations?
Fantastic. See? You don't even need it projected. You have the 3 things, your expectations. So those are the 3 things we'll be discussing.
That's all good. Everyone is clear on that? 3 points? Okay. But we will demonstrate that just briefly. Yes, go ahead, please.
So I'm Krista Tenari, and I live in the United States. And I've been involved in social and emotional learning for about 20 years. And I am passionate about young people and helping them thrive in society and helping them live a happy life. And that's what got me involved in the work that I'm doing now, is really my passion for their well-being. And I'm also passionate about the well-being of educators and supporting them in the work that they're doing, because they're doing this work every day, with young people. So my rationale is if I can support educators, then they can support the children, and then that kind of has a multiplier effect.
Thank you so much. So we want exchange for the sake of time, but otherwise what you will do is once you have heard from your partner, then you will introduce, and then your partner will listen. And then now at the end, when we come together, then it will be, in our case, it will be my honor to introduce Krista. So this is Krista Tenari, and she's an educator in C Learning, has experience for 20 years in teaching C Learning, and she's very passionate about the students, their thriving and happiness and well-being. But Krista is also very interested about the well-being of educators, because she sees that if the educators are healthy and they have good health and they experience well-being, they will be able to bring that to their students and others. So this is Krista Tenari.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's it. So in our case, then Krista would have an opportunity to listen from, introduce me to you as well, right? So now we're going to do this, okay? And then we will time it. When we ring, we don't have a bell for this session, but we will borrow something, make a little noise. When we ring a bell or just make some sound, you have about 15 to 20 minutes to finish your 20 seconds, sorry, yes, that would be a lot. 20 seconds to complete. And then, we will ring the bell again, and then you switch. When you are introducing to the group, we won't spend 2 minutes. It will only maximum 1 minute. So you have to summarize, that's present the key kind of elements of what you heard. But when we are sharing with the other, you will have 2 minutes each. Is that all clear? Yes. Okay. So would you like to have them get started?
Sure. So I think one thing to keep in mind is some of the table groups have odd numbers of people. So make sure, please look around and see who needs a partner so that you can have everyone have a partner. And we'll give you a moment to do that. And you can start.
Ting ting chira sarve. Bell chira sarve.
Does anyone else need a partner? Please raise your hand. If you need a partner, right here. You can partner up right there. Does anyone else need a partner? One more? 2 more? So who else needs a partner?
No, not yet, not yet. Actually, it's okay. Krista, should they start? Should they start?
You can use this and with the mic.
Okay, perfect. So if you haven't already started, 2 minutes begins now.
When they introduce themselves, they have to be like really short, like 30 seconds, because there's 60 people. If there's a
know.
minute, it's like an hour, right?
Huh?
We give each person a minute, it's an hour.
Oh dear.
So we need to have them be very brief.
30
And you were
seconds.
brief. You were less than that. You were 20 seconds.
So
It needs to be something like
you
that.
tell them.
Okay.
Yeah. I think when we start,
Yeah.
just set it 30 seconds
Yeah.
maximum.
Yeah.
No, second is not a minute.
You can ring. No, that doesn't ring. Okay.
Don't like mic they share.
Do the.
Don't.
Calling yourself as the first person. Thank you. You can thank your partner, and now the next person will be able to share. Okay? So I'm going to start this timer with the next person. Please move on to your partner. Find out what else you can learn. Okay? What are we saying?
How was it? It's good? Okay, so now we would like to hear from you, as you introduce your partners. There are 2 microphones. I think one, yes. Who wants to go first? I think we should go one from here, one from this end. Instead of just doing the kind of popcorn style, maybe we should go from here, so we don't miss anyone, right?
So we have one request before you begin, and that is you just are brief in your remarks, because we think introductions are very important because, of course, building relationships with one another is part of the reason why we're all here together for the training. And so we really want to know who's here and why you're here. We also have a fairly large group of 60 people. So if you do the math, if every person takes 1 minute, then that would be a full hour, right? So we were thinking maybe perhaps if you took 20, 30 seconds and no more than that for each person's comments. So we'll ask you to be mindful of the time just so we can share with one another, but also not have it take too much time. But we're really looking forward to hearing about who's with us.
Good morning once again. I'm honored to introduce my partner, Vedant, here at my left. Maybe we honor we have heard about happiness curriculum being launched by Delhi government, right? And many of us have gone through the happiness curriculum. So in short, he's one of the contributing members in designing the happiness curriculum of Delhi government, which is being implemented in many of the Delhi schools. He belongs to the Bia Foundation, and the foundation works for the well-being of children and youth, and he expects to learn more about C-learning and could contribute more in his foundation. And he says he's super excited to be here with all these like-minded people and to learn more on the topic and to go back and work more efficiently in his foundation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. And I'm also honored to introduce my partner. And his name is Educator, and he's from the Dynamic Institution of Higher Education. And we all know the importance of implementing secular ethics to the schools and monasteries and everything. And he's the one who has been really doing it at practical level and he has been teaching secular ethics at the institution of Telangana Institution of Higher Education for 4 years. Also, he has come up with his own idea and a curriculum based on the books by his own Beyond Religion. And his expectation is to learn more about sea learning, and this is completely new to him. And he also very much excited, super excited to learn more from everyone and from the educators and your friends. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Please.
So I'm honored to actually introduce my mom. I think that's a trend that's going on, but yeah. So Pema is in charge of C in the Department of Education. And her hope is that all of these educators and trainers become mentors who can take the torch forward when it comes to C across the world. She's very enthusiastic to be here and hopes that she herself can become a very good trainer who can then go around and do all of the different schools and then forward this, the skill to other people as well. I hope I'm not missing anything. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning. My partner name is K. Jelodu Sambo. He's from Chandra State University, and he want to learn more about secular ethics. And his expectation is all the young generation might know about the secular ethics and practice in his life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, it is my pleasure to introduce my longtime friend Educator. He is a science teacher and currently teaching at STS Chandragiri. He feels that he is optimistic and a stubborn teacher regarding the welfare of others and students, and he is a student-centered teacher. What brings him here is that he feels that in our community, emotions are normally kept sacred and bottled up, and the social skills are normally not introduced well. So he feels it's very important for us to learn SEE. And what he expects from this workshop is that he feels a little bit of introduction, even though he doesn't expect much only just a briefing, and he wishes to apply our teachings in real life.
Thank you.
Hello. To my right is Shime Dorji. Shime has been working in a Tibetan children's school in Himachal Pradesh, and he's been an educator for the last 20 years, and he's in charge of the special needs program there in the school. And so he's been interacting with children for so long now, and he thought that there is an urgent need for C learning to be introduced back in his school. So when his principal told him about this workshop, he was very, very excited to come here and learn more about C. And he hopes that when he goes back, he has more of a clarity that he can bring to his school and introduce it back there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'll be introducing my geo friend Monsunda. He's from Nepal, and he's currently a science teacher at Camp 3. There is some Mundgod. And from here, from this very workshop, he is expecting to learn about the difference between being realistic and being ethical. Because I think there is a tad difference between them, because being realistic sometimes may go against the ethical values. So the main purpose or the objective for him to attend this workshop is to find a solution to differentiate between these two. And I think I forgot much of the points that I made, and I'm not able to understand the points that I got down. So that would be it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So, my friend here is Miss Priyanka, and she's from Rajasthan, and she works for a foundation called Shaltlan Foundation, and she has studied public policy, but in the field of e-learning, she has been recently interested in this, and she loves working with children. And being here is to learn more about e-learning, and then when go back, she can be working better with her colleagues and to share the experience and share what she learned with them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So my partner's name is Damian. He's from Dharamshala, and he has already been working on the secular ethics for like 4 or 5 years now. And his expectation from the workshop is to understand learning that in a better way, so that they can deliver it to the students. And his kind of mission is to deliver it to more than 40,000 students in the next 9 years. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Learn a lot from him as well.
Thank you.
Namaste everyone.
Namaste.
It's my privilege to introduce my partner, Kalsen. Kalsen works for orphans and destitute children under the umbrella of Tibetan Children Village School, Dharamshala. He is also a board committee member on secular ethics curriculum in TCB schools. And he is basically a counselor and a psychotherapist for past 25 years. From the workshop, we would like to acquire some more skills on SCE learning, which will further help in developing realistic curriculum for children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, how are you everybody? So it's an honor to introduce my friend Reneshu, and he's a student of the IIT, right? And his key interest is to learn about the social emotional learning, and he already worked with several 8 schools, and he's working for one organization called Mundgod, right? And his expectation is to learn from here more, and he wants to extend the C-learning curriculum to more than 100,000 students a year. So that's great. So I think this all I understood from him.
Thank you.
40,000, right? This is adding up. That's excellent.
Yes.
What a coincidence, like both of us.
You want that number in mind. Great.
That is great.
Good morning, friends. I would like to introduce Ms. Anshu from Center of Excellence for Social and Emotional Learning in Pirana Foundation. Ms. Anshu is very passionate about improving life chances of children, especially those who come from vulnerable background. A psychologist and a counselor with a keen interest in Delhi government's work and C-learning. Is also a C-learning core committee member at NCRT, New Delhi, for developing life skills curriculum in all the schools. She would like to have from this workshop the best practices for developing C in children, C-learning in children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello everyone. So he's a science teacher in a nearby monastery called Dagir Monastery, and he's been studying Buddhist philosophy for over 20 years now. And Buddhist philosophy and mind training and other related topics. And he's here for the first time in such a workshop, and he's excited to learn about ethics. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. He's Rahul, the counselor of Pune. He's a mental health professional working with children of special needs, various kinds of special needs, and he runs an NGO as well as runs a meditation center where he himself facilitates meditation for the clients as well as the educators. And he wants to take away the learning from the workshop so that he can work better with his clients and also the professionals, mental health professionals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello everyone. Our name is Rajiv from Rajasthan. He works on Shiksha's education center, and he practiced mindfulness few years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. This is Pooja. Hi. This is Pooja Singh from Uday. She works in an NGO called Shamtalay, where she works with tribal population. And she's a DMT, dance movement therapy practitioner. She's come here basically to learn how to create awareness for children to make better decisions when they grow up. Through personal experience, she's learned that there's a need for this, so that's what she wants to take home from it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaskar. I am here to introduce my friend Zinda. I'm sure it's very short and succinct. Somebody will not do justice to the work he does. He's from Sarah Monastery, and he has been teaching young students there. He's also part of, or he was part of the Emory exchange program. And he has been very inspired and motivated by His Holiness the Dalai Lama's vision, particularly to promote the sense of oneness. He's hoping that from this workshop he will be able to take the learnings and be able to share it with the students back in the monastery. Thank you. Hello everyone.
Hello.
Hello everyone, it is my privilege to introduce my fellow learner, Awan Pujula. He had come from Drepung Monastery, Kathmandu, Nepal, and he had heard about ethical learning for the past few years, but during which he had developed interest, and he feels that now the situation around us is getting worse, and he feels that this is the platform through which we can promote human values, and he is hoping and super excited to learn more about social, emotional, and ethical learning, so that we can go back and educate more monks in this monastery. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. My friend is Rashmaji, so she's from Mumbai, and by profession she is patriotic and a language therapist. She is a Buddhist practitioner for a long time, and she loves children, especially. She devoted many of his time for the well-being of children. So for that matter, she loved to spend quite a time with teacher how to improve their way of teaching, so that their children can cultivate a good heritage. And also she loves to spend with the children's parents, how to give them the method of how to impart their good practice to them. And she's also associated with the Office of His Holiness for about 20 years now. So she's wonderful, and I'm very delighted and privileged to have such a wonderful partner. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My partner, is from Himachal. She is a counselor and school teacher, and she is also a teacher. She is also a teacher and teaching the sea learning, social ethical learning, and she is also a member of this program. So she has a more responsibility to learn and to provide to other people and give information about it. And she is looking forward to learn more about
Karma, and she's from Dharanji, near Solan, Himachal Pradesh. She's been a science teacher for the last 5 years, and she's always believed that social, ethical, emotional learning is probably more important than academics. So she's here today to try and understand how to really put it into a curriculum and how to do daily activities with children so as to impart this knowledge to them.
Hi everyone. This is my friend named Arama. He's from Delhi and he was deaf here. One organization that help out of students, so out of school students get the best facilities. His expectation is very high. He expects to learn C learning, everything related with the C learning in 4 days, and he bring the expectation to his organization and put it in practice to make his and his organization meaningful and happy.
Good morning, everyone. So I am going to introduce my friend here. Her name is Shobhani Thapa, and she's from Delhi. And she is currently working as a coach for imparting or promoting this social, emotional, ethical learning to teenagers, adults, and various social entrepreneurs. And she has mostly learned about C learning by reading a book by the author Daniel Goleman. And she's here to have a better understanding of this whole C learning thing and to improve her skills so that she could impart this to her students in a better way. Thank you.
Hello everyone. So meet my friend Dorji. He works in a Tibetan school in Bainakuba, and through this workshop he wants to learn something that he has never learned before and take it back to his children. Thank you.
Hi everyone, here's my friend Ankit, and he's an educator at heart. Besides that, he also designs systems and curriculums. The expectation he has here is he wants to know how the community can come together for educating the heart and mind. And besides that, he's also here more willing to support others. So if you have any questions, put the person to trouble. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
There it is. I'm very happy to introduce Jamyang to all of you. He's a school counselor and he's been one for 14 years now. And he works with children in 7 Tibetan schools in South India. What brings him here is really the diversity of practitioners working with children coming from different geographies, and he hopes to engage in quite a bit of cross-learning. His expectation is that by the end of the workshop, he'll be able to understand how the social, emotional, and ethical aspects of this particular curriculum interact and inform each other. So, thank you.
Hello everyone, namaste. I'm sitting next to a very beautiful person, Losel. She's from Dharamshala, she's been a teacher there. And it's her first trip to South India and she's feeling very warm and homely. One, because of the sun, and two, because of the people here. And our expectation here is to learn and engage with all of you here.
Good morning, everyone. Let me introduce my new friend. She's Jyoti Ramachandran. She's basically from Chennai, Tamil Nadu, and obviously she's a Tamilian. And she works with the Thrive Foundation, and she's been already working as a coach for social emotional learning, and she's basically a psychologist. Her interest of coming here in this workshop is to incorporate mindfulness. To understand, because she's having interest in this mindfulness. And her expectation is that she will, after finishing this workshop, she will learn C learning to strengthen different kind of pedagogy. Thank you so much.
There's a button on the side.
Hello everyone. He is my friend. His name Tenti, and he is from Kota.
and he is working in government school, and he is more interested in teaching field. Then he had 7 months experience, and he is loved to spoken with children, and that's all.
First and foremost, wishing you a very warm 2019. So I have got a very strong voice. So. It's my pleasure to introduce my partner. He's Paiman Kalro from Nepal, and he's an elected member of Nepal Gelupa Education Forum. In the Nepal Gelupa Education Forum, he's assuming the responsibility of secretary. And he's very passionate about learning more about the skill learning, practice them, implement them, and benefit oneself and others. And he has this very strong desire. Whatever he learns here, he wanted to share the skill learning workshop with the Nepal Gelupa Education Forum as well as our monastery. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to introduce you to Moana from Ling, and she teaches Karnataka and science in Kudapur University. And what expectation does she have from this workshop is that she likes to learn about herself and then teach students about this ethics. And I'm saying this for the last one. She's a really amazing person that she's doing MA and teaching students, and she is a volleyball player in the state level. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad and standing here to introduce my childhood friend, Ling, and he's from Nepal, and currently he's following and shoulder the responsibility of teacher in Manjusri Teaching Buddhist Learning Center back in Nepal, and he has graduated archery degree from Central Institute of Higher Training Studies recently. And what he expects from this skill learning is that he wants to, he thought that skill learning is very interesting and useful, so that he can learn new things from here and go back to Nepal, where he shouldered the responsibility and to create a healthy relations among the students, those who are teaching, those who are taking classes. And thank you.
Hello everyone. I introduce my brother. She names Tenzi Sugar. She's from Dharamshala. Teach their vacancy for teach class 4 to 8, right? So she other expressions she care more about psychology, also how she to teach it. Plus what she method use.
Hello everyone. She's Anaya and from India, and she is a psychologist as well as a teacher. She teaches social, emotional, and ethical learning in Chennai, and she works in Thrive. That's all. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Let me introduce my partner here, Ling Pinso. He's from Drepung, Losel monastery. He came from Tibet in the year 1994, and I want to congratulate him for getting his Geshe Harappa's degree this year. His interest in learning about secular ethics and learning more methods, different methods about teaching the same is what brought him here. And his expectations, when I was asking him, was saying that these days everybody keeps talking about secular ethics and secular ethics, so he wants to make it like more simple. If somebody asks him what secular ethics is actually, so he wants to explain them in a simple way, and this is what he expects to learn from here, so that he can be able to tell others also about secular ethics and sea learning. Thank you.
Hello everyone. This is Drepung. He's from Nepal, and I think we have a couple of Acharya degree on our table. He's completed his Acharya degree from Nepal, sorry, from Varanasi, and he has heard from his mentor about SE learning, and I think he's here to learn more about it and see what he can do and how he can take this to children. Thank you.
Hello everyone. I feel great honor to introduce the person next to me. He is Dava Thundu. He is a teacher in a Tibetan school, and he has 15 years of teaching experience, and he said that he has basic knowledge of SE learning, and his expectations from this workshop that he wants to learn some tools and techniques to implement SE learning in school. That's all. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. The person sitting next to me is Konchok Tenzin, and he is a researcher on secular ethics. He works in Ha Charitable Hub and also Tibet Fund. What brings him here is he wants to learn in-depth knowledge about sea learning, and he expects to have a clear understanding of sea learning. Thank you.
Hello, good morning everyone. So I'm very happy to introduce my new friend, Ms. Komal Lata from Himachal Pradesh. She was a teacher, and right now she's working in online institutions. At the moment she's working in online institutions. So she had a teaching experience, especially children with those who are emotionally, socially, and economically deprived. So she had a very good experience. And what what expectations she had in her heart or mind is that it's a very direct connected to her profession. That is, she loved very much, or she mingled with those socially deprived children in Himachal Pradesh. So this is what I came to know from her. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, good morning. My class name is Tenzin Shinsang, and what brings she here is she really sort of looking for and try to find her purpose from these workshops, and then what she is expecting from this workshop is even though she is familiar with the theory of social emotional ethics learnings, but it's not easy to teach since you have no many sort of pedagogical and practical methods. So that's why she's really expecting some marvelous methods from these workshops. And then, yes, she's come from Uligar Tibetan colony, and then she's working there. She's working in Saboda Day School as teacher and principal. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to do a very brief check-in with everyone. How many of you feel very interested in what people are sharing? Do you feel very interested? How many of you feel like your attention is waning a little bit? Like it's taking a little more effort to pay attention because we've been asking you to do it for a while? I see a few people raising your hands. So it's just really great to be aware of that because we want to make sure that the rest of the group also gets our attention, because it's wonderful to hear from everyone, and we're showing such kindness and respect to each other. So I'll just ask you to check in with yourself right now and just refocus your attention for the rest of the group. Thank you so much for doing that.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to introduce Drepung. She has been working as a social science teacher at some boarding school by Educator for the last 6 months. She wants to understand about the skill learning and how to deal with various emotions of the students at her school. And she's expectation from this workshop. She wants to identify the various emotions of the students and what are the methods and implementation through which you can see and will be integrated in teaching at school. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice and pleasure for me to standing up in front of all the beautiful people over here. And let me introduce my friend in the left. So his name is Garek, and he's an educator, and he's working in Losel here. But at the same time, we don't have that much time to conversation that much because he's like a little bit busy with organizing things. And then he came here as an observer, as per our small conversation. And then regarding the C learning, he's expecting kind of this workshop is there. He wants to know more about secular ethics at the same time, not only to knowing himself, but also to extend more and more to others. So that's his expectation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to introduce my partner, Kechobla, and he is from D1S2 Monastery, and he has been teaching there for the last 3 years, and he's teaching science there. The sole reason why he is here and the expectation from this workshop is to understand and to differentiate the modern perspective of secular ethics from the religious point of view.
I'm going to introduce my friend, Siri Denzela. He's from Tome School base. And also he's the holistic coordinator in the Tome School. So then he thinks that the silver is really important to really contact with teachers, staffs, so it's really important. And then he hopes that he will have learned a lot of new approach, so improve the secular ethics or the silver in this workshop. Thank you.
Hello everyone. I would like to introduce my friend. His name is Amit Kumar, and he is from Drepung School, Dharamsala, Himachal Pradesh. And he has been teaching since from 3 years. He is holistic, and what brings him here is to learn deeply on social, emotional, ethical learning. And what is his expectation is he wants to make a good friends, those who are gathered in the workshop. That's all. Thank you.
Hello, Namaste. Today I would like to my partner. His name is Kishan. He is from Himachal Pradesh. He is working in here, and next he teach social service, and he is bring from here some social ethics and new things. Thank you for the opportunity.
Good morning, everyone. I got the privilege to introduce the lady next to me. She is Sharon Bongo, and she is from Gangtok, Sikkim. And right now she is teaching in SDS Chopra from last 3 years, social science. And what brings her here to know how to implement C-learning in real education. And next, her expectations are to learn from others to how to implement C-learning. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone. I would like to introduce the person who just introduced me. And her name is Ashwini. What a beautiful name. And she is from Emory.
and she is currently working at Shamtalia Foundation, and where she teaches to rural kids about on subjects such as maths and I think it's also EVS and English. And she's here because it was recommended by her coordinator about the workshop is going to happen here, and she's currently here to see what is this workshop all about, and if it is helpful, she's going to go back and implement in her education career. That's it. Thank you.
Kamsam, Namaste, good morning for everyone. Hey, I'm super excited to introduce my new friends. My friend's name is Drepung. He is from Bali. He was working in the beautiful NGO called Snowline Foundation. He was also looking for the 9 schools under this NGO. My friend's reason why he is coming here is because he always wants to learn something new. That's why he is coming here. And then the expectation is he really wants to explore and to learn things about e-learning, and then only he make a difference in Nepal. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. Please meet our friend Sarita Chaudhary from Dharamsala. She's working with Tonglen Institute, and she's from Sara village, Lower Dharamsala. She's working with slum kids, and she expects to have an immediate benefit from this workshop and imbibe all these learnings and then impart it to the children there. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. His name is Educator. He is working in the school master at Drepung Foundation in Missouri 4 years back. So why he is here, because he shared that most of these e-learning activities or curriculum is related to his job responsibility. And regarding expectation, he shared that because he is here, so he can learn about what the activities is e-learning. Once he is committed and what he is understand, then he can implement and share his quality with the student. Thank you so much.
Hello, good morning, Shubha. It seems to be very honor to me to explain my new friend named Nilza Wamu, and she has completed her PhD last year, and recently she's working in Warner Foundation on mind and brain, and she came here to know that how to implement and how to teach C-learning and what the C-learning is exactly. And her expectation is to meet with the educators who come from the different places. And also one expectation is more that she wants to inculcate and implement C-learning concept in the Ladakh school. That's all. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm super excited and super cold right now. AC. Turn it down a bit, please. Okay, this is Kamden. He's a language teacher, Tibetan language teacher at Selugui. He has been teaching there over 10 years. And he's also head of, it seems like in the school, his school has got a committee called Secular Ethics Committee. And he is the chairman of that. And this C-learning brings him here. So his expectations are to get new insights. In other words, learn as much as possible and share this new insights with his co-workers and students.
Good morning. You all are happy, I think. We're coming to the end of the introductions. I am extremely happy to introduce an extremely beautiful lady to my right, Dolma. And she comes from a place called Sonata, which is in West Bengal. I never knew of such a place. I've stayed there, so I think I'm already learning. She feels the students are very distracted because of technology, and she feels that SCL learning can actually help students bring back their focus to the classrooms. So she feels that in the workshop she's going to learn about new practices, and she's very new to this domain. So she's very excited about learning a lot more about this, and yeah.
Good morning. I'm very happy to introduce my friend, Mr. Losel. He is from CST Group Onsur. He is an English teacher here. He has already read books like Beyond the Tradition and New Millennium, Kingship. His expectation is to learn special tool from this workshop to share with his co-workers and special to teach his students. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to introduce my new friend today, and he works in Shamtala Foundation, which is in Udaipur. And what brings him here is he wants to understand about himself and he wants to create a sense of purpose. So that's bringing him here. And what he expects from this workshop is he could, this skill learning should not be left as an alternative. It should be integrated, it should be incorporated in the mainstream as well. That's all, thank you.
Good morning to all. It's my pleasure to introduce my friends. Nawan Chandra. He is like a teacher in Tibetan language teacher in TCB school, Gopalpur, Himachal Pradesh. The idea of the secular ethics is not very new to him, but the C learning program is quite new to him, and the expectations that he from that program is to learn about the C program more effectively, efficiently, and different ways of means. So at the end, he told me that he felt a little sorry for not able to fulfill his primary purpose during the language barrier.
Hello.
sorry, I have already forgotten his name. So, anyway, I think his name is Shugala, and he teaches at Saran College, Buddhist philosophy, and his expectation on what really he brought up here is that he wants to know lots of methods and skills how to teach the students that he's teaching at Saran College, and at the same time also he has an expectation of giving advice and show the path to many young generations from Himalaya. I think that's the brief what he said.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that everyone was able to introduce their partner. Everyone was included. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for doing that introduction activity with us. We'll just very, very briefly take a very brief reflection on the experience of doing the introductions. So I first would just like you to check in with yourself. How did it feel for you to engage in that activity, to have a conversation with your partner and then share? And if you would like to share, please let us know. And I think the microphones are still around. Thank you. How was it for you to participate in that? Do you have any impressions you want to share?
It was obviously very good, but what I noticed is that when two partners are introduced to each other, and then when you sit together and you're introduced to the third person, the fourth person, you talk amongst yourselves like a little bit, not make too much noise, you get to know more of them. So I think it's you sort of form a network, not just knowing each other, but then sitting together knowing the third person and then the fourth and the fifth. So yeah, that because I had a partner to discuss it, I think I know others much better now. Yeah. We filled in with each other. If I missed the name, he told me if I missed something.
Thank you. I also noticed that there were some helping skills happening. There was helping. So if you didn't hear the name, then you maybe asked your partner. We had the microphones going around, and we had to turn them on and turn them off, and there was coordination happening at your tables around that. Did anyone notice any other kind helping skills that happened during that activity? Yes?
One of the things that I kind of felt is an immense sense of respect for every person, because one comes with one's own narrative, but when you're here, you're so humbled to hear about the wonderful work that individuals in this room are doing. And I think just being cognizant of that, mindful of that, was immensely humbling.
Thank you.
Adding to this, adding to this, not every day you get an opportunity to introduce a monk. So I feel fortunate to do that. Thank you.
So I really want to share what my feelings right now, because I feel like it's important of individual because when someone introduces you, you can feel very attention. Introduce me, that means you are too much emphasis on you, right? Because someone introduced for someone, I'm much attention. Because I feel right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that's wonderful. So thank you for sharing those few points. We'll be coming back to this. I wanted to raise your attention to the idea that everything that we're doing with you experientially is something you can also do with your students or your staff or your group, whoever you're working with. And what we'd really like you to do is do two things throughout the next 4 days. The first is to check in with yourself how you are experiencing the activities that we're doing together. Right? Is it comfortable? Is it a little bit stretching your comfort zone? Does it help you feel a sense of community and kindness and respect? Right? Or are there things that maybe don't feel quite right to you. And this is important to keep in mind because our own experience impacts then when we're working with others, their experience as well, right? So raising your awareness about that. And then the second part is thinking about your particular group. You are coming from an amazing diversity of contexts and experiences. Some of you work in a formal school setting, some of you informal, younger students, older, all different kinds of contexts. So we will be trying to give you examples and ideas, but we can't possibly know everything about your individual context. So for you to think about the activities that we're doing, how can you then bring that to your group? And I think Geshe Abdur mentioned this morning, if something that we do doesn't feel exactly right to you for your group, you take the thing that we did and the purpose, the point behind it. So this was about building relationships and community and being able to share respect with one another immediately. Take the point behind it and see how you can change it a little bit so that it will work with your particular group. And that's beautiful, that's wonderful, that's how we want to see learning taking place in different contexts in a way that will be meaningful to your group. So we'll be drawing attention to that throughout the next several days, and asking you those questions about how it was for you and how you would apply it for your group. So it was wonderful to meet everyone, thank you.
Great. Would you like to stand up just for a minute? Because we have been sitting for almost an hour and a half. Stretch your arms and legs, just because we have another hour to go. So, as we are doing this, I just wanted to share with you that this exercise is something that really made an impression on me. I was attending a conference. It's similar kind of workshop, and when they introduced this, precisely as one of our members, friends mentioned that when you are expected to introduce someone, your attention to the person's life and details, it really becomes kind of the very focus. And also, when you are going to be introduced, you think about what you want to really, others to hear about you, right? So I think it's a good kind of thing to keep in mind when you are sharing this kind of activity with the students also. Thank you very much. Have a seat. Obviously we have wonderful facilitators like the Krista, a master teacher, that has done many these teacher preparation workshops for mindfulness and other programs. My other colleague, Jen Knox, will be coming here this evening. She will be here for 3 days. You will have a feast in this. My role here is to offer to you a rationale behind this program, and also to share what are the key components of the framework for social, emotion, and ethical learning. I'll try to go quickly because much of what I have to share, Geshe Abdullah has already shared with you this morning. So I was just joking earlier that maybe, we should just, enjoy now, for next 4 days, because we have already learned everything about C learning. But I hope that some of the details I will bring here to your attention, it will resonate with you. You probably know already all of this. It's just a way to remind ourselves, and perhaps we can, through discussions, perhaps see some different kind of perspective or angles, from different angles. So, secular ethics, as I mentioned in my remarks this morning, is really secular ethics, our version of secular ethics, or His Holiness's version of secular ethics. It goes to His Holiness's vision. He, in the Ethics for New Millennium, it's a book written on ethics for this 21st century. In the book, he says that a revolution is called for, certainly, but not a political an economic or even a technological, technical revolution. We have had enough experience of these during the past century, the 20th century, to know what a purely external approach will not suffice. What I propose is a spiritual revolution. So let's keep that in mind. A purely external approach will not be enough. Purely external approach. And His Holiness proposed a spiritual revolution, spiritual revolution. So let's kind of break it down. Purely external approach, as Geshe-la mentioned earlier, His Holiness articulates in this book and Beyond Religion as well, that modern society places too much focus on external development, material development, that is, and in some ways neglected the internal development, the inner progress. And that kind of creates an off-balance, and that can have ramifications, on individual well-being, but also the social well-being. So spiritual well-being, the revolution, he is proposing a spiritual revolution, but he says that he's not kind of asking for a political or economic or technical revolution. He probably will say not religious revolution. Also, spiritual revolution. What is the difference between spiritual values and religious values? In the book he wrote later, Beyond Religion and Ethics for a Whole World, and a sequel to this, there he gives a metaphor. So I'd like to ask you, how many of you prefer tea over coffee? If you could raise your hand. Those who like tea better than coffee. I thought that there would be more here, but about half, more or less. So the rest of you prefer coffee over tea? Could you raise your hands who prefer coffee over tea? Okay, that's good. About the tea drinkers, do you think everyone would stick to one flavor of the tea? Or you probably have different flavors, right? That you prefer different flavors. But let me ask, who among us can afford not to drink water? Anyone does not need water? Doesn't like water? Anyone? Not, right? Because the water we need to survive. Without water, we will die. Tea, we can do without. Coffee, we can do without. Different flavors of the tea, we can do without. Likewise, the spiritual values for His Holiness, as he articulates, those are basic human values, like kindness, compassion, trust, the generosity. These are basic human qualities. Without that, humanity would not survive. We cannot thrive. It's like water. The religious values, a specific religious kind of faith-based, belief-based, kind of metaphysical, beliefs and concepts, those are wonderful. I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't get His Holiness wrong, I should say. He's, of course, if a devout religious practitioner, so of course that he has many religious beliefs and so forth. It's not about, kind of devaluing them, but those religious values, whether it comes from Christian, theology-based concept, or the Buddhist, or the Hindu, or the Jainism, and any different religions, and those are like the different flavors of the drink, like whether it's coffee or tea, or the different flavors of the tea. So it's wonderful if you resonate with a certain kind of ideology, certain, religious values. That's wonderful. It will bring the best in you. That by all means we should adopt it. But we cannot expect everyone to resonate with those values, or should try to push on everyone. Those values that we ourselves kind of, like, right? So that's where the secular ethics for His Holiness comes. Secular in a sense of universal, not against religion, but not grounded in religion. It is grounded in basic human values. That's why he says that his model of secular ethics is based on 3 pillars. Number 1, common experience or the personal experience. Our own common experience, like the golden rule. It is just in some ways, that, do unto others what you want others to be done, right? So this is a kind of the beautiful approach. All the major spiritual traditions have made this a foundation to really convey their message, of kindness and compassion and so forth. So personal or the common experience is one. The ethics kind of founded on, or they're grounded in the personal experience. Common experience is the other, that instead of some kind of a top-down approach, somebody says so, not in that way, but rather to use the common sense. There's something that makes sense. That's compatible with the common sense. And thirdly, he says that this approach is grounded in scientific finding. Scientific finding, here I think we need to have a word of caution. That is to say that not everything science presents is necessarily valid either. That the science is a way of doing exploration. And it depends on methodology, what methods you use. Based on certain tools and methodology, you will kind of come to see certain aspects. When the methods change, the tools change, you will see another aspect. So that's why the science keep upgrading. That's not to say that everything that science currently presents is forever or absolutely kind of, infallible. But the fact that the scientific finding that are findings based on observation and a sound kind of, investigation, and when it is repeated, when there is mounting kind of the evidence, then we have to take that into consideration to a certain extent. So that's why approach to those basic human values, how we promote, His Holiness proposes that they need to be grounded in those 3 kind of approaches: common experience, common sense, and scientific evidence. Now, in proposing spiritual revolution, His Holiness, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, that he says that modern kind of approach to education, or our focus in modern times, is too much focus on material development. So the world today is different in many ways than perhaps last century, or 50, 60, or more, at least a century or so ago. Now, another person who is instrumental in shaping the social emotional learning field, and we should say social emotional and ethical learning as well, is Daniel Goleman. And Daniel Goleman and Peter Senge, they wrote a book called Triple Focus. I'll say a little bit more about that. In that, this is a kind of this very short book for educators, and it's a triple focus, a new approach to education. It's beautiful. It's a really a book that we are grounding our framework, the structure at least, on that book. He says that kids are growing up in a very different world today, one that will change even more as technology evolves. These kids are also growing up in a world facing unprecedented social and ecological challenges that will need to help address. That we will need to help address. So it is a kind of very different world. Technological, tools as they are evolving. But we are already seeing the kind of impact of these little gadgets, right? This social media, impact of that on the erosion of our social connections and the social connectivity, and therefore on mental health. It's really alarming. The major thinkers are very concerned about that, the Daniel Goleman included, and that's why that they are proposing these very new tools to education, in the education, not just the technical kind of education, science, math, and so forth and so on, but these have to do what they call soft skills. So now you can, the major challenges that Daniel Goleman talks about, His Holiness articulates in Beyond Religion as well. Just take one example for global warming, for example. It is true that there is a small group of people who still think that this is a hoax, that in America, yes, certainly. But evidence for global warming is just mounting. You can see it, if you see from 1860s to this is kind of the rise of the temperature in 2000, between 2010 and now, it has kind of increased many-fold. And I have seen this data, particularly in the last 10 years or so, each year kind of progressively has been the hottest year ever recorded in the recorded history. So what is contributing to global warming and what kind of impact it will have for our future generation? Secular ethics or the sea learning is not about just for now. It's sure for now, but also to ensuring the humanity will flourish for many years, right? So those are some of the things we have to keep in mind. Like that when you see this how the glaciers, when you see this gives you a brief kind of visual, sense of the melting of glaciers, from 1990. In 1997 to onwards, if you can see that this kind of shows the receding of the glaciers, and if you watch documentaries by Al Gore, one of the vice presidents of America, Inconvenient Truth, and there is a sequel to that. There are very kind of current research-based kind of data that they present. It's just undeniable that how the warmth is, and that kind of creates that these kind of weather changes create a lot of problems like in India, droughts and so forth. The climate refugees, like the Bangladesh and other places where the flooding and so forth happen. The refugees, when we're talking about the people, have to be dislocated. That the communities and communities, all these are major challenges we are facing in some direct or indirect ways. These changes are connected to our behavior, the practices how we are living our lives, what we consume, and so forth and so on. And that's why it's related to our ethics or the behavior. The other part of that is you see what we are seeing today, the polarizing of ideologies, whether it's on the religious lines or the political lines. In America, certainly in India, probably it seems like that there is a sense also that greater polarization is happening. The civil wars, even just kind of killing their own people because of the different ideologies. Here, these are this also. This is an image in America actually. That these are neo-Nazis. There was a big kind of clash in America. So you can see, that here also that these are climate. On the one hand, this huge gap between rich and poor. You see that, high rises over there, and then here they are living in just this tents, this kind of a huge gap between rich and poor. How would not that impact the kind of lives and the mindset of the people who are underprivileged, like that? And if that's growing, we will have larger portions, kind of the numbers of population facing this kind of difficulties. Other challenges, mental health crisis. This is a huge issue, mental health crisis. It seems like it in every part of the world that is happening, like the prevalence of mental health disorders among youth. You see that according to this 2010 report in USA, that a country that enjoys enormous kind of, the wealth and riches, 49, almost 50%, according to them, they suffer from some kind of measure of mental health crisis, like that. So this is a kind of quite mind-boggling challenge, and that's why His Holiness the Dalai Lama or many others, they're here in India, they are the great thinkers around the world, they are all concerned about this kind of the situation. How can we go on living this way, and not destroy our own communities? In the United States in 2015, the Time magazine had this cover article, the Anxiety, Depression, and the Modern Adolescence, where it shows that 3 million teens between 12 and 17 years, they report at least one episode of major kind of disorder, like the depression or the anxiety and like that. 30% of teens in that age group report anxiety disorders. It's just not just kind of some fear that where they have to take medication. Hopelessness, which is a major kind of contributor to depression and the suicide and like that. 30% of teens regularly kind of they experience sadness and hopelessness. So these are major issues. This is a kind of, I just quickly did a survey about India itself, mental health issues and like that. You can see what you see here, mental health in Calcutta, just they are national levels, but then an individual kind of city level studies. The Calcutta city, almost 20% of children suffer from anxiety, like that. In Pune, we have the participants, and so forth. 18% of adolescents in schools are depressed. And there's similar. These are just all these numbers you can see. Substance abuse and suicides. 40% of suicides in India are committed by someone under age 30. What does it say? Under age 30. 30% of suicides, and there's a huge, over 100,000, suicides committed every year in the United States, in India. So it tells the kind of enormity of this challenge, that what people are experiencing. In South Delhi, for example, 49% of the boys and 40% of the girls report, being in physical fight and in the past year, within a year, in the fights. So bullying and so forth and so on. And these kind of situations demand that we come up with some new thinking, new ways to, bless you. Wow, sorry, this is a Western expression. We should say sitting, in Tibetan, with long life, long. So that's what is happening. And it's because of this kind of crisis on mental health, not just in developing countries, but it's also certainly in third world countries and everywhere. United Nations in 2011, they adopted this agenda for global policy, to recognize happiness as one of the measures for progress. We're all about progress, that education is for progress. Whatever we do, we are kind of this, seeking progress, right? We don't want to just get stuck where we are, but society is about making progress. But the progress of what? How do we measure? What should be the yardstick to measure our progress? Would that be purely how much money we have? or there needs to be something else. So what they realize, these kind of thinkers, is that just purely measuring progress along material development is not adequate, because you can have a tremendous material accomplishment but still be suffering with depression, suicides, and all those things. So that's why they kind of adopted this mandate for measuring, kind of using happiness as one of the measures, to the yardsticks to measure happiness, and then created a kind of committee to research and then come up with certain kind of data that can help policymakers, make policies, on the federal or the government levels and the state levels and so forth. So they have been producing this report called World Happiness Report. It's commissioned by United Nations every year, actually. The 2006, I have seen since 16, 17, because that's when we had to be seriously involved in this. This is from the 2017 report. Now here you see adult life satisfaction, happiness. If happiness is one of the measures for progress, or that say the quality of life, if we are living a good quality life, is a measure that needs, then what kind of predicts, what counts, what constitutes quality of life? Certainly, income, material. It's not that we don't need material things. Material resources are important. Education is important, because that if you have the education, you have to, you will be able to find proper job and so forth and so on. So the employment, having right employment, this comes in the financial domain, financial area. Then these have to do with the social, in the social kind of the dimension, our social areas. That how are we interacting? Are we kind of fighting with killing and stealing and so forth, so on, the crimes, and how is our family life? Whether it's this relationship with another student or the teacher and student, or within the family or within the neighborhood, and so forth, so on. So the relationship is a major part. So this is the social domain part, and the health. Third kind of component is the health, and of that is the physical and mental health. Now, what they find is that while these are all kind of important contributors in many ways, but it's not the intellectual, how smart you are, that is straight A student and that you land at a great job. That's not the case. It doesn't matter whether you come from a very rich family. It doesn't matter that much. I mean, it is certainly all of this have some contribute to some extent, but it's the behavioral and emotional part. How do we act? How do we behave? How do we respond to situations in our life? And what is our emotional life? Are we often so nasty, angry, depressed, anxious, or more collected, calm, balanced, mindful, kind, compassionate? These matter a lot. Emotional. They found that biggest predictor for happy life or this life of satisfaction is behavior. And of that, when you see that the life satisfaction depends on childhood kind of the behavior. And there is actually a big study on how childhood behavior impacts later on in your life. And then what predicts childhood behavior and emotional kind of life, it's not a family income, the parenting does to a huge part, family breakups and so forth, but actually it is the mother's mental health. Think about it. Parents' mental health, of that, those particularly mother's mental health is a big predictor of childhood mental health. That predicts the adult mental health, and that is the predictor of the good life, happiness. And also the school environment, which primary school and secondary school children go. School environment or the ambience is a big, big predictor. So from that, they kind of concluded in this report, mental health is mental health in adulthood is what is the biggest predictor. That depends on childhood mental health, that depends on parents, particularly a mother, and the social ambience. And there they said that which school a child went to, both primary and secondary, it predicts as much of how the child develops as all of the characteristics we can measure of the mother and father. That this is true of what determines the child's emotional health, their behavior, and their academic achievement. Implications for policy are momentous. Make note of that. Implications for policy are momentous. Policy for what? Policy, for what kind of school environment we're going to have, what kind of curriculum we're going to have, that. And how can we kind of raise children? What kind of environment that they are raised? This is what. So that this kind of brings us to education. The school ambience is important, and that is why, in the 2000 version of their report, they actually had a chapter on secular ethics. There was a 4-chapter report in 2016, and the 3rd chapter was entitled Secular Ethics. And then later on, actually, there's some version that said happiness ethics, but originally, it had 4 secular ethics. And these were, the authors of that particular chapter and the research behind that were done by a group of experts from the London School of Economics and the London School of Economics and the Political Science, right? I think that's the name. I have it here. Maybe not there, but anyway, Richard Laird is one of is the main author there. So they're making a case for happiness to be one of the main measures, for progress, a progressive society. What society is progressive need to be measured by how many people are enjoying life, quality of life. And so they said that it's the authors say that we need a new ethics which incorporates the best values to be found in all religions, but which is equally convincing to people with no religious faith at all. And they cite His Holiness, as the Dalai Lama puts it. And then from beyond religion, they quote this: we need an approach to ethics that can be equally acceptable to those with religious faith and those without. We need a secular ethics. So it's not either or, just take religious and sort of oppose science, or they just take just the science, oppose religion. What His Holiness's approach is, as Geshe this morning mentioned, is grounded in the Indian model of secularism as articulated in the Indian Constitution, and that is to respect all religions, but those who don't have religion as well. In that sense, it's a universal, and that to do that, we need to go to the water metaphor instead of tea, focusing on tea and different flavors. Does that make sense? Are you okay so far? Okay. So at this point, I think, Krista, you had something to share here?
We can do it. We have, want to do a time check? It's about 5 minutes to 12:30.
It's 5 minutes to 12:30?
No. Yes, it is.
Huh?
Is it okay to still do the activities at the time?
Should we? 5 minutes. We have only 5 minutes. Yeah. So, what should we do?
We can do it, and then we can.
Okay. Yeah. Why don't we just do a brief activity, and then we can break for lunch, and then afterwards we will go maybe just spend a few minutes on the framework.
Okay.
Please.
Good. So thank you for the presentation, which gave a lot of context around the need for this kind of work. And so what we want you to do is just, considering all of the data which you now have heard around mental health and
World Happiness Report and all these other issues, to think about what part of that resonates for you in your context where you're working. What kinds of issues are your children or students experiencing in your context? Maybe some similar ones that were mentioned here, maybe a few that are different. So we would just like you to have a brief table conversation right now, just discussing what came up for you, some thoughts around the information that's been presented so far. Because as we stated, we want you to keep applying this to your own situation. So we'd like to invite you to have that conversation now, and we'll give you about 5 minutes to do that. So it's a pretty brief conversation, but perhaps it will be a start of a conversation. You can continue at lunchtime. So of course, we've all met each other now, so we can continue these discussions as we like. And we'll ring a bell after 5 minutes, and we just have a few announcements before we break for lunchtime. Okay?
So this is a conversation for each group.
I guess in my context, because the children speak their words out, they that I'm the parents are also not working, they also have not children do not get that emotionally wanted. I would like to understand these ways
already suffering, I can retrofit awareness. There has to be the prevention of this. My react center is all about intervention. Then if I have I can draw things from there and take it to childhood implementation against these things.
Can you hear me? Oh, fantastic. All right. So before we break, I just want to point out a few things. You received some materials, yes? So you have this wonderful brochure, and you have, did you get this yet? Yes. Okay, wonderful. And everyone has the framework? And we'll be referencing these and using them more deeply. We'll be doing more active activities as well, but we really needed to give you some of the background and context before we delved more into the learning experiences and activities. So you have that. You also have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, which we're doing. And that's a guide. We might be making some adjustments to that as we go along, just based on the needs of the group or our timing and whatnot. So it's there just for a guide. And I also wanted to just point out the schedule. So you should have received a schedule for the week as well. Every day you can see the times on there and the tea break times and lunch and whatnot. So we'll be ending at 5 o'clock every day. And if you have any questions or issues or needs or problems, please let us know so that we can help you be comfortable. One other thing I wanted to mention was if you need to take a break, stand up, move around, use the restroom, please feel free to do that at any point in time. We certainly would like you to be comfortable, so no one will take offense if you need to go do that. So please feel free to do that. So I think right now what we're going to do is take a break for lunch from 12:30 to 1:30, and then when we come back, we of course will dive right in and get started with more information and activities. So thank you very much. See you after lunch.